So when we think about Agile and Scrum and the different ways that nonprofits are using Agile methodologies, Agile values, Agile principles, maybe they're utilizing the Scrum framework in their work. One of the questions that seems to be popping up with increasing frequency is about strategic planning. Where and how does strategic planning fit in with Agile, with Scrum? How can these values, these principles, how can these connect? Where can this help us with our strategic planning? Okay, so let me back up for a second. When we think about strategic planning in a nonprofit organization, what does that bring to mind? It brings to mind for me something that is 3 to 5 years long in terms of what's the output, that plan, what it's going to cover. It's going to cover something that will guide an organization for the next year, the next 2 years, the next three, four, maybe even 5 years. That's a long time. And what's one of the things that we know about things that are long-term plans? Real world life might happen. But organizations, they create the plan so they can see the roadmap, they can see the vision for where they think they're headed. And then if anything changes, well, hopefully they embrace Agile value number 4 and they respond to change over following a plan. I think part of why this conversation is popping up so much right now is because we think about what happened to nonprofits since March of 2020. So when the pandemic started, was it going to be short term? It's going to be a few months, a year, 2 years. Well, organizations were quickly adapting to what their communities needed. Funders were allowing nonprofits to adapt to what their communities needed. Funders were making changes in their process to make it easier for nonprofits. Not all these changes stayed in place long term, but that was what was happening in the moment. And the groups that really thrived were not groups that would have said, our strategic plan says this. We can't adapt. We can't handle this. The groups that thrived are the ones that said, well, here's where we are. How can we thrive? How can we respond to change over following a plan? Now, that doesn't mean that the strategic plans aren't important, but rather, when I think of a strategic plan, an organization that is embracing those agile values, that agile mindset, when they're thinking about maybe those Scrum team values, an organization that is thinking about that and also then saying, how does this help us with strategic planning? I think that's an organization that acknowledges that this is a big, high level roadmap. This is our best laid plan for what we think we want to address over the next 3 to 5 years. Yet we acknowledge things may change along the way. But the strategic plan helps give our team priorities. This plan helps give our organization an overarching, quite frankly, product backlog. What are the things that we want to focus on? What are the things that we as an individual team or as multiple teams in an organization should be focusing on? So you may see language in the Agile community about story maps. That, yep, a roadmap, a story map, those are similar to something really big and long term when we're thinking about a strategic plan. So that's part of how I see where Agile and Scrum, how they fit right in with a strategic plan. It's not necessarily about the facilitation technique that you're going to use to get that strategic plan done, although some facilitation, maybe design sprints, design thinking, those are the sort of things that may be helpful for an organization when they're thinking about approaching strategic planning from an Agile value place versus maybe what they've done in the past. So, those are my thoughts on how strategic planning can be supported thinking from an Agile or a Scrum point of view. Let me know if you have additional questions about it. Absolutely happy to talk about it more. Be sure to reach out. Our team loves, of course, talking about all things Agile, but strategic plans are such a foundational building block for so many nonprofits. And as they think about what they're doing, what they're prioritizing, they go together, yep, like peanut butter and jelly. So make sure to reach out if you've got any questions.